Do you ever wonder about those little towns you drive through that are just a dot on a map? Places that not many know much about. What made them? What broke them? What could still haunt them? Well, we're going to dive a little deeper into that. I'm your host, Doc Stef, and welcome to Rural Doc Hop. Our next stop on this adventure are two small towns in east central Ohio, Dennison and Uhrichsville. Dennison, Ohio has an approximate population of 2,700 people currently. The village of Dennison lies at the intersection of Ohio State Routes 36, 800, and 250 in Tuscarawas County. Dennison's close neighbor, Uhrichsville, Dennison's twin city, currently has a population of approximately 5,100. It was founded in 1804 by Michael Uhrick, who was the first settler to the area. He was a mill owner. The town's first name was Waterford, but due to the mill, Uhrick's Mill, its name was changed to Uhrichsville in 1828. Uhrick's Mill was extensive and consisted of 4 different wheels. One was for sawing wood, 1 for grinding wheat to flour, and 2 for grinding corn into cornmeal and livestock feed. Grain from the area was shipped by canal to the markets in Cleveland, Ohio. The canal was the top source of income for the area, especially for those buying and selling wheat. Later, a boom came to the area when 32 different clay sewer pipe manufacturing plants made their factories and warehouses in the county. Many other products were also made with the rich clay found in this area, including bricks, chimney flue liners, as well as artistic pieces the workers made in their spare time. After lobbying the state government for a rail line from Steubenville to Indiana, the Ohio legislation authorized the Steubenville and Indiana Railroad Company. The people of Uhrichsville were set on this rail line coming through the town as it could bring a wealth of trade and money to the area. The proposed project would run the rail line from Steubenville through Uhrichsville to Coshocton and then west to Newark and Columbus. Work on the railroad began in 1852, and although many areas were easy to lay, other areas gave the workers a very hard time. Tunnel 42, section 42 of the route, had to be cut through a ridge between the Conotton and Stillwater Creeks and would be a 1,400-foot-long tunnel. For 2 years, this tunnel plagued the railway workers. The first 100 feet had to have an arch support wall due to the western sandstone roof being unstable. The eastern end was also unstable and had to have walls for support. The eastern end walls were 6 feet high and ended up having to span 1,000 feet long. It was finally opened to trains in December of 1854. Unfortunately, the Steubenville and Indiana rail line was not a success, and the company was poorly equipped to handle what was needed to be successful. There were no connections from other railways, and the original idea to build a line to Pittsburgh was held up with the difficulty of securing a permit to cross the Ohio River. When Tuscarawas County finally decided to take back the taxes they were owed from the railway, they hired Levi Sargent of New Philadelphia to collect them. Since the railroad was tipped off, no train stopped for him in Uhrichsville. He had to find an engine and lock it to the rails. After a brawl with a railroad hired man, the railroad got their engine back, but Sargent retained the iron rails and had them moved to New Philadelphia. Those rails were sold to pay back the back taxes. There were many other such lawsuits and debtors throughout its time. They did manage to keep the railroad going through the Civil War, and eventually they were able to get the permit to build the bridge to Pennsylvania. They also struck a deal for the Newark to Columbus line. This opened rail from Pittsburgh to Columbus. Once this was completed, the Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and St. Louis Railway turned its attention to the area. Dennison was found to be a good centralized location between Pittsburgh and Columbus, about 100 miles from each, and at that time, steam locomotives needed to get water about every 100 miles in order to continue to run. This, as well as the Dennison Coal Company, with mines just south of town, made this the perfect place to build a rail station. In 1865, the Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and St. Louis Railway decided to locate railroad shops and a yard in Dennison. The town of Dennison was laid out in 1865. In time, this became one of the largest railroad shops in the country, spanning approximately 40 acres. In 1873, the demand for passenger services led the construction of the depot. Around the time, approximately 3,000 people worked for the rail yard. Dennison became one of the most complete railroad shops in the country, with many rail shops and up to 21 passenger trains and 21 freight trains per day. It was also along the route that most took from New York City to St. Louis, Missouri, and was the most direct route. The first 2 decades of the 20th century were marked with prosperity for the small town of Dennison. An overhead bridge allowed workers to go from work at the rail yard to Center Street after work, and many businesses blossomed. Houses would have to be scrubbed regularly in order to remove soot from passing steam engines. One rail shop was the machine shop. It was 310 feet long by 90 feet wide, with innumerable windows and a central large skylight. No fewer than 14 tracks ran into the building. 150 men were employed in this shop alone. They ran a 6-foot lathe for drive wheels, as well as quartering, slotting, deading, and bolting machines. Also found here were drill presses, wheel presses, and other small planers. The area was usually used to put together steam engines and conduct repairs, but they could also make a full railroad engine car from tip to tail if needed. They turned out an average of 50 steam engines per year. Other buildings included a boiler room, ice house, and the waterworks. The boiler room was 80 by 100 feet and had 2 sets of steel rollers and punches, as well as shears, bolt cutters, and bolt machines. The area was very hot and dirty, which made work here dangerous. The ice house was needed to hold an immense quantity of ice for the replenishment of ice boxes on railroad cars. It was 50-foot square by 60-foot tall wood frame building. The waterworks was a large 450,000-gallon reservoir tank and a 250-gallon-per-minute pump that sat lofted on a hill. It was the main water source for all of the rail yard. The Pennsylvania Railroad announced plans to spend $325,000 to upgrade the shops in 1906. This would equal approximately $12 million today. This money was used to construct a new 34-car roundhouse east of the planing mill, and a new planing mill was to be built on the site of the existing roundhouse. When young men left the shops to serve our country in World War I, 25 women from the Twin Cities were working in the shops. That increased to 135 women by 1918. In July of 1918, major improvements to the rail yard were announced at a cost of $1.5 million, approximately $26.5 million in today's currency, allowing for a larger turntable and an extension to the roundhouse, as well as new machine shops. At the end of World War I, men returned home to their jobs in the rail yard. The downfall of the Golden Age of Dennison started in 1922 with a railroad strike, with decreased rail traffic due to limited availability of workers. This strike was brought on by the Railroad Labor Board approving a cut in wages by 7 cents an hour targeted at railway maintenance and repair workers. This would have amounted to a loss of approximately 12% of their wages. 7 of the 16 U.S. rail labor unions went on strike on July 1st of 1922, with 400,000 railway workers walking off the job. The railroad companies started hiring strikebreakers immediately. On July 3rd, the head of the labor board pushed through an outlaw resolution that declared that all strikers had forfeited their arbitration rights guaranteed by the Transportation Act of 1920. In many towns, the local merchants and authorities gave morale and actual help to the strikers and refused to sell groceries to strikebreakers. Some towns even had picnics to celebrate the strikers. Multiple attempts were made to break the strike on the federal level, but it had to fade on its own as laborers and shopmen slowly made deals with the railroads at local levels. An increase in train traffic would again happen during World War II. Dennison Depot became a Salvation Army Canteen during World War II and operated from 1940 through 1946, serving refreshments to troops that were passing through. It served 1.3 million soldiers and was later nicknamed Dreamsville, USA, after a Glenn Miller song. The canteen was manned 24/7 by volunteers ready to give coffee and food to the numerous soldiers that were heading to war. This was one last stop on the National Defense Railway for our boys going to war. Ohio had 12 of these canteens, and Dennison was the third largest in the country. This canteen was started by Lucille Nostifer. She, as well as a small group of local ladies, would make sandwiches, cookies, and coffee for military men stopping at Dennison Depot. They slowly grew to 4,000 volunteers over the 8 surrounding counties who were involved in the effort. Local women would cook in their own houses and use their own cooking supplies as well. Farmers would donate bushels of apples and other crops to help feed the troops. When troop trains would stop briefly for water, soldiers would get off the trains if permitted, or canteen volunteers would hand food through the windows. Each soldier would receive a sandwich, a cup of coffee, a piece of fruit, and a cookie or cupcake. Stories of locals giving their extra sugar rations to make sweets for the troops spread widely. In December of 1942, a call went out for Christmas boxes for the troops. Each box had to weigh approximately 1 pound and could contain cookies, candy, nuts, cakes, and an optional package of cigarettes. The locals responded with over 5,000 boxes, filling a room at the depot top to bottom. In 1944, locals dyed Easter eggs as well to give to the troops. These actions not only deeply touched our troops, but the volunteers themselves. Many could not necessarily remember the faces or names of the troops that came through, but they could remember the hands graciously accepting food. On December 20th of 1942, the Times Magazine reported on the town of Dennison and its canteen. It was said to rival New York's Stage Door Canteen and Chicago's Service Center. Over the 4 years of the United States' involvement in World War II, it is said that more than 2 million sandwiches, 1.3 million cups of beverages, and 1.6 million pastries were given to the troops. Also, 500,000 magazines, books, and newspapers were supplied. The last passenger train service stopped in 1968. A freight line was revived again in 1992 as part of the Genesee and Wyoming Railroad. In 1978, the Dennison Depot was designated a National Historic Landmark. The depot was purchased by the village in 1984 from Conrail and restored by a grassroots volunteer group and local vocational school students. Reopened in 1989 initially, and between 1992 and 2007, it had undergone 4 additional phases of restoration. During these restorations, all architectural elements were restored or replaced. Many of the signs were reproduced and rehung. You can still see the original and restored stained glass windows if you visit. Today, Dennison hosts a railroad festival yearly in May, with live entertainment and food. The Dennison Depot houses the museum and gift shop where you can learn all about its history as well as local history. I went on a day trip here with my mom and my oldest kiddo. When you go in to start your journey, you will stop and pay the entry fee. At that time, if you have a child, they can start their scavenger hunt through the museum. There are many different stops with different interactive pieces to make this a more enjoyable time for kids. They will also start out with a set of dog tags that they can later turn in and get small trinkets to add to them and take home. One of the most fascinating portions of the museum is the part that is located within railroad cars itself. You will go through multiple different types of rail cars, but the one that caught my attention the most was the World War II hospital car. Hospital cars were generally made up of generous amounts of clean, wide bunks, which were typically stacked 3 tall. Typically 36 beds would be found in these. These bunks could be turned into benches that the wounded could sit on instead of just lying down on. In an emergency, these bunks would also be turned into stretchers. They would easily fold for cleaning as well. Each car was equipped with electric lights, steam heat, electrical fans, and latrines. Medical cabinets with medical instruments, clean bandages, and other medical supplies could be found on each car, as well as an area for a nurse to use a typewriter to take notes for each patient. Some cars had an enamel operating table with a bright overhead light as well. During World War II, doctors would see a wide range of severe injuries and illnesses. These included broken backs, horrible broken bones, and missing limbs. Amputations were common, and they would have to fight the swaying of the train while trying to perform intricate surgeries. The movements of the train cars also would cause tightening of the bandages, causing infections and worsening of wounds. With the discovery of sulfonamide, penicillin, morphine, and the use of plasma, many previously deadly infections and injuries could be treated and survived with less pain. It's crazy to think that a regular hospital train would have had 16 coaches and approximately 375 beds. Many of today's rural hospitals operate with many fewer beds than one train could take care of. Of these 16 coaches, one would be for the very ill and infectious with 18 beds, one with those sitting but needing infectious care with 56 seats and 14 berths, one a sitting sick officer's car with 3 beds and 20 seats, 8 lying ward cars with a total of 288 beds, 1 staff car for doctors and nurses with 8 beds, and 1 pharmacy car. The other cars consisted of cars for staff, the kitchen, a personnel car, and 1 for the crew, as well as 1 that functioned as a store. Another interesting piece of history is Bing, the World War I mascot of the Dennison and Uhrichsville Volunteer Unit Company H of the 10th Regiment, Ohio National Guard. Earl, Lewis, and Frank Gray were brothers who, when they left from Camp Love to go to basic training, they could not take their collie with them. When they reached Camp Sheridan, Alabama, for basic training, they found a new mascot and became Company D of the Machine Gun Battalion. He was a white and black bulldog with 1 spot over his eye named Bing. He was originally smuggled at 9 days old from France in an overcoat from his berth in an army tent, and eventually made his way to Camp Sheridan. He traveled abroad with the troops serving an active duty on 5 different fronts and had 58 days in the trenches. He even had his own cape and helmet, which are on display at the museum. He was awarded 2 citations of bravery and rated 2 wound stripes when the war ended, and he returned home with his unit. Definitely stop by the gift shop on your way out of the museum. Currently, you will find a lot of neat America 250 gear, as well as train and military-related trinkets and gifts. There are books on Ohio's railways, local history, and military history. Children's toys and gifts are also found here. Dennison Depot also has a yearly Polar Express train ride. This approximately 1-hour ride features a story of the Polar Express, hot chocolate, cookies, and a visit from Old St. Nick himself after you are magically transported to the North Pole. This event is in December each year, and there are many different days and times that you can go. I personally went a couple years back, and it was absolutely magical for my oldest, who received the very first bell of the 2024 Christmas season. This year, many other train rides are happening, including fall train rides, military appreciation train rides, and a not-so-scary Bing's Halloween Adventure, which I look forward to with both kids. Speaking of things to do with kids, one thing you'll notice is that pizza plays a big role in my life, because my oldest is a pizza fanatic. The Yard restaurant, a pizza place right across from the Dennison Depot, is definitely a place to stop. Kids can do a make-your-own pizza with dough and toppings brought straight to the table to them to artistically decorate. Waiters will then pick it up and take it to the oven, and then it's served right to kids on their own pizza pan. You can get an ice cream sandwich for dessert as well. We have tried a few of their specialty pizzas, which have been very good, and anything coming out of the kitchen smells and looks amazing. Now for the paranormal side of things. The depot itself is said to be haunted by many ghosts, which makes sense for such a history brewed in those working long hours in dangerous jobs and military men going to war. One such spirit is that of what is believed to be a nurse on the hospital car. During one investigation, a question was asked if she was still there, and a female voice was caught on EVP answering, "Yes, where would I go?" Toward the back of the museum is an area with a display which is even marked that there are some ghostly activities that happen there. In it, pictures will be turned around or flipped over, some even knocked over. In the same area, some have issues with cameras or equipment working properly. Flipping images or batteries going dead quickly. It is said that a man in a red and black flannel shirt can be seen sitting in the lobby area or reflected in the glass behind you as you leave. Some typing can also be heard from one of the offices at night when no one is in there, and that's just the inside. When outside at night, it is said sometimes you can hear someone running along the tops of the cars, or the full-bodied apparition of a conductor or other workers have been seen roaming the tracks at night. Many have done investigations which have provided EVP evidence and personal experiences of figures walking the museum when no one should have been there. Those that take tours of the museum or walk through themselves often feel as if someone is following them when no one's there. Many describe this as a weird sensation, but many do not feel bad or scared. If you listen closely, maybe you can still hear the voices of the past that linger here. Uhrichsville also has a couple notable ghosts. Witnesses have experienced a Civil War soldier marching down the street at night. Others state it's a whole marching band, or just a few members. During the Civil War, it is known that a Civil War regiment camped in this area, and stories have it that their band would march on the road for practice. There is also a building that used to be a tavern downtown circa 1930. A man named Zachary Tree was murdered there, and his ghost is said to haunt the place. Employees have been said to walk into candles burning that had been extinguished the night before locking up the restaurant. It's also been reported that chairs have been moved or other things have been found out of place. So what do you think? Would you visit and learn more about a small dot on the map? Would you look into more history of an unknown small town, the era it was founded in and thrived, and what caused it to decay over time? Would you even dare to haunt the ghosts that haunt the area? Special thanks to the Dennison Depot for your amazing museum and history. I look forward to visiting again. Stay tuned to Rural.com for more small town history and lore. Thank you for lending your ear. I'm Doc Stef, signing off for now.